Welcome to the Mind's Eye. In our first three programs, we've stressed the importance of the concept of psyche, or breath, soul, life principle, the Greek term, for an understanding of psychology in our daily lives. And we've linked the concept to vast temple complexes of Asclepius in ancient Greece and Rome, in which millions of afflicted pilgrims slept in order to dream their cures. There's therefore a direct link between dreams and the notion of psyche, both of which are associated with life-giving, with connections to worlds beyond human experience and mortality. And it's not surprising that dreams should be so intimately associated with prophecy, with divine kingship, with claims to religious authority, and with medicine and healing. Now, in our last program, we focused on the distinctions between true and false dreams. We briefly chronicled the evolution of the distinction in early Christian period through the Reformation and noted that Martin Luther prayed to God not to send him any dreams at all so he wouldn't have to wrestle with trying to know whether a particular dream was sent by God and therefore true, or sent by the devil, in which case it was deceitful. Now, there's always been ambiguity in knowing whether people had to be powerful in order to have true dreams, or whether true dreams conferred power. Now, first let me reply to one viewer who asked if true dreams required belief in God. The answer is not as clear as I would wish. In a society in which beliefs in God are shared, if someone claims to have had the true dream, such a person will theoretically be seen to be religious, since true dreams are a sign of divine election. Much depends on the context. As we said, in ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Greece, the assumptions about divine kingship drew upon the tradition of message dreams sent by higher powers to kings and politically important people. For believers, from the early Christian period to our own day, clarity and truth in dreams have been associated with divine election. Here it's useful to introduce the 17th century French philosopher René Descartes, so intimately associated with our tradition of rationalism. He describes a series of dreams that relieve him of having to worry about whether or not God is a deceiver. In the first dream, he's sitting in his bathrobe before his fireplace, fire blazing, when suddenly he's caught by a whirlwind and spun round and round repeatedly. We can only guess what he might have looked like. In the second dream, he's once again sitting in his bathrobe in front of a blazing fire, but the spinning is not as fast and doesn't last as long. In the third dream, he's writing something feverishly, and all whirlwinds have vanished. When he awakens, he begins work on his extremely influential book, Discourse on the Method, Discours sur la méthode, in which he argues that doubting the testimony of the senses, his method of doubt, leads to the conclusion that he cannot doubt that he is doubting. From there, the indubitable truth of his own doubting, he constructs the idea of a God who does not deceive. He begins with a sort of obsession about the possibility of what he calls a malin génie, crafty little devil, who might be hoodwinking him about the truth of his senses. In the end, however, the existence of God guarantees the veracity of what he senses. Now, what's interesting about all this for us is the context of true and false dreams. Descartes has been hailed as essential reading in Western philosophy, and his Christianity has been given second place to his elevation of the powers of reason over the senses. But if we take his doubt seriously, it leads to the need to believe in order to rid himself of the nagging suspicion that perhaps he has no way of knowing what is true without first putting God in his heaven so that all could be right and understandable with the world. There is then a direct link between the nagging doubt of poor Martin Luther and that of Descartes. Only Descartes had the bright idea of making truth dependent on what he presented as an indisputable fact. One cannot doubt that one is doubting. and his entire theory grew out of a sequence of his own dreams. Moreover, he made his third dream divinatory and powerful, because he actually sat down and wrote the book that previously he'd only dreamed of writing. All of which brings us back to the various discriminations among terms, words such as dream, vision, hypnagogic experience, hallucination, and delusion. Now, if we arrange these on a spectrum, and assuming there to be much overlap since they can all conceivably be dreams, the tendency is to move from more to less legitimate as the relevance of our sensory world order grows weaker. Dreams can easily be discounted because they're merely individual fantasies, so our assumptions go. Dreams are not to be taken seriously because sensory experiences are not real. The senses are put to sleep. Visions are a little more difficult since there's always the possibility that one is not asleep while seeing a vision, and that challenges the testimony of the senses. Hallucinations entail seeing what's not there, and once we get to delusions, we're definitely off in far left field, cut loose from the moorings of shared social experiences. Delusions are easily dismissed as inconsequential bits of irrelevant belief. But might these various linguistic categories not have the effect of marginalizing dreams as experience and bolstering assumptions about how firmly reality is grounded in sensory impressions? Yet, if we look at our own dreams and our own experiences of telling dreams, how can we know whether that nightly experience is a dream, a vision, a hallucination, or a delusion? Now, it was the genius of Freud to have realized how central the experience of dreaming is for a theory of thinking. Although he borrowed heavily from the tradition of Asclepius, with its emphasis on suffering and belief on life and death, Freud believed he could define psychic reality through his series of theories of the mind. For him, psychic reality was altogether distinct and separable from delusions and hallucinations, even though he relied on his theories of dreams and dream interpretation to establish his science in the first place. As we've said, the whole question of worrying about whether dreams are true or false, God-sent or sent by the deceiving devil, assumed far more centrality because of our Judeo-Christian tradition. In the world of the ancient Greeks, everyone knew the gods deceived humankind as they deceived each other. The current succession of fashionable theories, from structuralism of the 50s and 60s through the deconstructionists of the 70s and 80s, and now the postmodernists of the present day, all entail a loss. As with the grandest of theological structures, these grand cathedrals of interpretation skew the experience of doubt by narrowing its compass and excluding the world of the unseen. Now, one way to approach all of this is to say that in the past several centuries, the relation of theory to fact has shifted such that there's a growing tendency to see facts as true to the extent to which they can be linked to sensory experience and support the theory proposed. In the light of our Western traditions, there seems to be a correlation then between the discrediting of dreams, the avoidance of existential and experiential doubt, and the growing emphasis on interpretation and science, seemingly in tandem. Now, modern medicine, psychology, and the entire spectrum of the health sciences are often more preoccupied with illness entities and diagnostic categories than they are with suffering people, frightened of dying and unable to feel alive, more concerned with treating illnesses than people, more preoccupied with medical facts than with social responsibility. Now, paradoxically, by hiding the problem of doubt and mortality beyond the reaches of belief in claims of scientific method, present-day writers in psychology, psychoanalysis, and all the social sciences have removed themselves from essential sources of our tradition, thereby exacerbating the marginalization of dreamed experience and its cultural supports. We can see this in Freud, who claimed scientific status for his descriptions of the workings of the unconscious. But Freud's assertions about psychic reality shrink the horizons of truth in dreams. Approached from the Asclepian perspective, we can pertinently ask, How can dream interpretation help understand suffering and death? In what does the truth of an interpretation consist? In what does an adequate interpretation consist? Now, all this doesn't mean, as we shall see in future programs, that Freudian dream interpretation is to be discarded. Indeed, it's extremely valuable. But like our contemporary attitudes, Freud's attitudes towards dreams and their interpretation avoid doubt and skirt human experiences of suffering and death in important ways. Freud's world and our own draws upon the rise of rationalism in the 17th century and its transmogrification into the social sciences today. It is a conceptual world in which dreams are isolated as individual phenomena to be mistrusted because they present us with doubt about what we can assume to be true and what makes it so. Now, if by definition dreams are not true because they're not defined as quote-unquote real, then there's no need to ask the question, do we have to believe in God for a dream to be true? But this question, animated as it is by creative doubt, needs to be nourished if we are more freely to explore our psyche, what makes us feel alive. If we are to provide ourselves with shared visions of worlds beyond the compass of our individual lives. Now, let us now turn to a couple of non-European patterns of initiation dreams for insight into how dream patterns can influence perceptions of truth or falsehood in dreams and their relation to claims of power, and how shared cultural beliefs can nourish dream experience and cultural values at one at the same time. Also, as we'll see, there are similarities in the functions of dreams and dream interpretation cross-culturally. Now, the two areas, cultural areas on which we'll focus today are those of the Plains Indians in North America and the indigenous peoples of Siberia. The American Plains Indians had an elaborate tradition of dreaming songs to be sung by those adolescent boys wishing to be accepted into the tribe as men. The initiates would go out into the plains alone, suffering considerable hardship, often thirst, hunger, sleeplessness, and severe discomfort. Before they could return, they needed to dream a song. The picture grows more complicated, since the song needed to be given them by their guardian spirit, and needed also to conform to acceptable songs of initiation, a little like a PhD thesis. Both had to follow certain stylistic and organizational guidelines. So these initiates had to know what kind of dream would work. They didn't simply fall asleep, dream any old dream, and sing of it. And the elders of the tribe had to know what kinds of dream songs were acceptable and what kinds were not. Such knowledge falls under the rubric of shared cultural knowledge and was not merely an individual matter. If the initiate returned, sang the wrong kind of song about the wrong kind of dream, he would be told to go back out into the wilderness and try again. And if he still couldn't get it right, he would engage in various kinds of emolition, like cutting off a finger joint and bleeding profusely, in order to get the thing right at last. Now, there are obvious similarities with the message dreams in our Western tradition, stemming back to ancient Mesopotamia and Greece. In both cases, the function of the most prized dreams was to establish links with the unseen world of the gods and spirits, with the world of the dead, and then to demonstrate these connections with recognizably powerful dreams. We are reminded again of the Greek notion of psyche, breath or life principle. That's what's lost in death. Another non-European tradition that can help us understand our own is that of the peoples of Siberia, such as the Yugakir, the Evenki, the Yakuts, and the Buryats. For these people, the shaman, a central figure in the religious and social organization of the clan, derives his powers from his relation to spirits, which he cultivates through dreams. However, the profession of shaman is at once a blessing and a curse, a bit like epilepsy is the divine illness in ancient Greece. Those who eventually become shamans manifest serious symptoms, sometimes associated with what in our tradition might be psychosis. They hear voices, have delusions, have painful physical symptoms, often are paranoid, and extremely restless. Now, in the aggregate, these symptoms made the suffering adolescent in question a candidate for the profession of shaman. In fact, it was believed that only the practice of shamanism could cure the afflicted adolescent of such symptoms, interpreted as the call of the spirits to become a shaman. As with the Plains Indians, the adolescent shaman was expected to dream a song conveyed to him by his guardian spirit, and then sing the song as proof of his connection to the spirits of the other world. In accounts of shamanic initiation experiences, the novice not only sees terrifying visions and hears voices, but is then literally taken apart by these spirits, dissected, boiled, disassembled, before he can be put together again as a new shaman. For the Samoyeds, the novice finds that spirits are taking his skeleton apart, scrambling the bones, and then putting the pieces back differently, as though he were a badly made jigsaw puzzle that had to be corrected. During the initiation period, the novice had to learn the structure of the cosmos and the topography of the worlds beyond, where the paths leading to the other worlds could be found, the placement of the dead, the dwelling places of the guardian spirits, and the demons of disease. The Buryat believed that the initiate would leave his body lifeless for 7 days and nights while ancestral spirits absconded with his soul, which they cut up and cooked. All over Siberia, the initiate's experiences were grim. Candidates lay lifeless while the soul saw limbs disjointed on iron hooks, blood drunk by the souls of the dead, shamans' eyes torn from their sockets, flesh cut and pierced with arrows, and rather flagrantly horrifying dismemberments, constituting proof of divine election and otherworldly powers. For the Evenki, it was the dead shaman who ordered the initiate to follow him, explicitly connecting the dead to the living. And the hunting-dependent Evenki, before hunting expeditions, relied upon the shaman to retrieve the souls of the animals to be hunted from the keeper of the species and the otherworld store. Such journeys to retrieve souls could not be imagined without dreams. These cultural sketches of patterned power-bestowing dreams provide us with additional perspective on the dreams that we have been discussing in the past several programs. Like the dreams in the practice of incubation, the sleeping in temples or holy places in order to have curative dreams, the dreams of the Siberian shaman are both curative and power-bestowing. They afford the only cure for the pre-shamanic afflictions and also allow the shaman to treat a variety of diseases, just as do the dreams of the devotees of Asclepius. As we said, both the tradition of Asclepius and our medical tradition grew out of the Chthonian cults of the dead. Not only the initiation dreams of the Plains Indians, but also the dreams of Siberian shaman explicitly link the realm of the living and dead and are directly related to the practice of medicine and the treatment of illness. Now, in all this, the role of dreams cannot be underestimated. For all these peoples, dreams are the hinges of connections with the worlds beyond. Patterned dreams constitute proof of otherworldly authority mediated by powerful individuals and bestowing upon individuals exceptional powers. In all these traditions, dreams reveal the secrets of what is lost in death, what makes us human, and how our humanity depends upon unseen worlds. The very distinction, then, between true and false dreams can be seen in the light of what kinds of connections with the beyond we wish dreams to make. For the ancient Mesopotamians, as well as the Buryat, the most powerful dreams are true in that they reveal connections with divine powers, just as the dreams of the afflicted going to the temple of Asclepius are true if they demonstrate the power of the god to heal. From the vantage point of cultural belief systems, then, the truth of dreams consists in how well they demonstrate connections with the divine and with the dead, in how they render palpable the concept of life, the meanings of suffering, and what is life-giving. In this program, we've once more been preoccupied with what makes dreams true, how they can become true, and how they can be judged by others to be true. In the next programs, we'll turn to the dream interpretation in Morocco and its roots in the dream book of the Greek Artemidoros, to the iconography of dreams, and to contemporary techniques and theories of dream interpretation in clinical work. I hope you will join me then.
As he come into his target with the bomb sight, he would tell the pilot,